Yes. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all joining. So I'm here to share some experiences regarding the implementation of architecture and analytics platform at Husqvarna Group, and also the role of meta model, central role of underlying meta model to solve the IT landscape puzzle. So that's our lessons learned so far. And before I jump into the topic, let me introduce myself. My name is Julia. I'm an enterprise architect working at Husqvarna Group, part of enterprise architecture team for Husqvarna Group globally. So we report to CIO office. I also hold a PhD in informatics. So before joining Husqvarna 5 years ago, I worked with a lot of projects helping different public and private companies to work on their business and IT alignment. So basically to bridge the gap between IT solutions and business processes, business strategy, and focusing on the context of digital transformation. And I will get back to that. First, just a quick overview what Husqvarna Group does. It's pretty interesting always to talk about that, because as soon as you mention Husqvarna, there is some example of products that people came across. And yesterday I heard some examples of sewing machine, motorcycle. So Husqvarna Group is quite having quite a broad product portfolio. So we produced a lot of different products throughout time. So it was started 334 years ago as a weapon production, and it's been changing the product portfolio ever since. So we are quite quick to adapt new innovations on the market and to change what is our offering to the customer, right? So that's quite an interesting thing about Husqvarna way of working. We are around 14,000 employees globally, and we are operating in we are selling in most of the continents, and we are also having manufacturing facilities in 28 countries. So you can imagine also the production scale that we have, and also the variety of ERP systems that we have in our IT landscape. We include 3 business divisions. So Husqvarna Forest and Garden, providing solutions for forestry and big gardens. So for example, football fields, golf courses, lawn care in that area. Second one is known for residential gardens, is Gardena. So it's a brand in itself, but it's a part of Husqvarna. And that one is known for garden care for smaller gardens and watering solutions. So we have automated watering solutions for smaller gardens for residential purposes. And last but not least, Husqvarna Construction Division. So it's a light construction. So for example, demolition robots or diamond cutting tools. So that's also part of Husqvarna business offering. And as I already mentioned, we've been known for working with innovations throughout the history. So every year we are revising our innovative product portfolio and defining our strategical areas for the innovations. So this year it was watering. So given what the climate change is dictating, we need to have right watering for different type of lawns and environments. So robotic and automated. Second one is robotic lawn movers. So that's pretty big. We are still leading provider of solutions in that field. And we are developing even more innovative and better solutions. Battery solutions. So instead of petrol-driven ones, to produce the battery-driven riders, for example. And professional solutions in different areas such as construction and forestry. And being a part of enterprise architecture team, we are often asked to provide an overview of our business. So we are getting questions like, so how does our business process for construction division looks like? Or how does the customer journey for this specific area looks like? So what are the touch points? Most of the questions are also related to the IT landscape overview, and this goes back to one fundamental question. So what are the companies made of? So that's always the question that we keep answering in one way or another. And we, from enterprise architecture perspective, we always like to slice it into the layers, and there are different ways to do it, of course. So one way that I sometimes use is to slice it into 3 layers: identity, architecture, and experience, starting with vision, then with capabilities that you have in order to implement that vision, and then drilling down into processes or experiences. So how does customer experience our products or service? Another more technical way to slice it is suggested by Archimate framework. Here we have 3 layers. We start with the business layer, and business processes, strategy are placed in that one. And then we also can zoom in and look into application layer and technical layer. So here we have IT landscape represented through different elements. And basically here we can analyze how our different components are supporting business layer. And a little bit combined representation of these two is this circle way of looking at things, starting from the value generation and capabilities, then business processes, and last but very not least, tools, right? So we have both digital and physical tools in order to implement our business processes. And also, here we always look into the IT systems, right? So typical example of questions would be like how many different ERP systems we use across the globe, or how many business applications that we have that are hosted on the cloud versus on-prem. So different types of questions that need to be answered to support different migrations initiative or new digital transformation initiatives. In addition to that, we do have the part of IT landscape that is located here in the middle. So it's not only enterprise IT, we also do have that layer that is connected to product IT. So all our products are connected, the data is sent to the base stations, to the cloud, and then we have digital services that are provided to our customers. So customer can just remotely control and see the statistics of the usage, get the notifications. So that's a huge part of the value that we provide to the customers. And the observation that I think any of the enterprise architects are doing is that throughout time we have the challenge of ever-growing IT landscape, right? So we are having more and more tools and solutions added to the IT landscape, so that's quite a natural phenomena. I see a lot of you nodding, so you recognize the reality. And I like to compare this to this garage metaphor. So our IT landscape needs to be an enabler of assets or of the cars that needs to take a business from point A to point B, right? So we, from the CIO perspective, need to support our assets in the good control and make sure that it's safe to use these assets. As soon as we have this challenge of ever-growing IT landscape, we do have the complexity that is growing, the risk, and the costs. And it becomes very hard to use that kind of IT landscape as an enabler. And that's the key point to actually have IT landscape in the good control. So we need to have transparency and flexibility of our IT landscape. We need to provide these tools as an enablers. And here we also have something that I mentioned in the beginning is digital transformation context. So all the investigations that we support from the EA perspective are always helping some sort of digital transformation to happen. So the investigation of the IT landscape is usually connected to either migrate data or to migrate systems. So like change management around users who are using old system and need some legacy, need to be migrated to a new system. Previously, the challenge was that it would take us on average 3 to 6 months to produce an overview of our IT landscape, certain aspects. So for example, if we would get a question, how our digital commerce platform look like in US, that would take us, in the best case, some month to provide that overview. And that would be some sort of documentation that is used only once. So when I see some people nodding, so that's probably not only Husqvarna's challenge. And after realizing that part, we have formulated 2 strategic goals that were connected to how we are handling our architectural practice. First one was connected to knowledge-driven decision-making, so all the decisions regarding IT landscape investments or migrations will need to be done based on the knowledge, on the data, on the facts. So that was the first one. And the second one was to grow the capacity of architectural community. So we had to really progress and move forward on how we are working with architectural practice. Yes, and that brought us to the implementation roadmap for architecture and analytics repositories, so how we want to work with our architectural artifacts more efficiently based on the data, and how do we make sense of our IT landscape based on the data about it. And here we have a central role of meta models. I already mentioned that, it's synonym for data model, and most of you probably know of the concept. So meta model is a model about model, right? So it's some sort of rules regarding what type of objects and relationships we can use in the area. So if we take an example of this model, customer using a loan mover, a meta model for this one would be actor and product and association relationship between them. We can go even one level higher, and then we say entity and relationships being a meta model regarding this area. So it helps us to identify what are the key objects and key relationships that we are allowed to use to represent this area. Why do we like to use models so much in enterprise architecture area? Well, I like to simplify the complexity, and I think that's the main reason to use models, right? So the IT landscapes are usually quite complex, and trying to highlight different important aspects is usually best done by representing it in one picture overview, where you can highlight the most important aspects. So it's also very important to remember that all models are wrong, but some of them are useful. So it is always a simplification of certain domain. So for example, you can highlight the new part of user groups or new elements and the ones that need to be removed. So this type of things. And then getting back to producing this kind of blueprints, right? So previously, we would run long investigations, pre-studies, and that would take an enormous amount of time and resources and only would have been used once. In some cases, several times. But how could we work with that more efficiently? So we need to implement, the decision was taken to implement architecture and analytics repository that would help us to generate the models regarding our IT landscape based on the data, based on the facts. First step that we took was to represent different objects that we are maintaining, that we are working with in our IT landscape. So for example, we were working with business systems and their functionalities. And we've just been, we heard the presentation from Stibo, so that's where our application master data was located. We also do have some infrastructure data, so that was stored in ServiceNow. Also, there were some legal legislations regarding the data that we're handling in our systems, and that one we stored in OneTrust. Cost information on our IT landscape was coming from different sources of truth, So it was Aptio and SAP. And that was the picture that we started from. So that was our point A, let's say, 6 years ago. And based on that picture, we realized that we do have several sources of truth, and we are working in silos. We don't have really like this connected IT landscape data. So the yellow arrows were the only one integrations that were established. So for some applications, we could figure out that, okay, this one is hosted on the server located in Husqvarna, and that's how we could maybe make some conclusions. For many areas, it was still in plan, so we didn't have really relationship between our different areas. That was the starting point. The point of our destination point was this big. Sorry, that was the previous one. To solve that puzzle, to map those domains together, we identified a shared meta model. And here, of course, we wanted to go for industry standards. So we've selected the vendor and framework supporting Archimate, so standard meta model for representing IT landscape. And also it was very important to anchor it with the teams who are working with these objects daily, right? So we have business applications that are connected to capabilities, then we have processes and roles. So it was possible to work with our sources of truth data and basically take the data from our sources of truth into the Orbus Infinity platform. So that was the point B. We are still on the journey, so let's also look into the point now. So we basically prioritized which areas we would like to activate first. And the ones that are green here, these are the ones that are managed in the Orbus Infinity platform. The ones that are red, these are the ones that are mastered in some other systems, but then copied to Orbus Infinity. And the beauty about using the standard meta model is that after that you can generate reports and different dashboards based on the data that are standard, that are out of the box. So you don't need to really generate those different reports and dashboards and tweak them and really spend time on adjusting this Power BI. So you have out-of-the-box reports that you can, for example, use to visualize application capabilities or which applications you have in different capability domains and similar type of examples. Great. So some of the lessons learned. Here is, I think the first point was to start with the mapping of the existing sources of truth. So just to understand where do you have information on your business applications? Where is the information on infrastructure? Do you also have some overlapping sources of truth? Because in many companies that's the case. That was also the case for us. So for example, software was handled in 2 different sources of truth. So we had to also identify which one do we follow. Second point is to anchor with the standard meta model across the CIO office, because effectively these teams that you have in the CIO office, they will be the ones working with these sources of truth. They will be populating them daily. So one thing is that you take that data, let's say about business applications or about infrastructure into your repository. Another thing is that you need to maintain it and update it daily, because there will be new business applications that will be added, and similar to it also to infrastructure. So basically that's a very important point to really anchor it across the organization. And then also to prioritize the data domains that will be activated in the tool. So for us it was we observed 3 types of scenarios, right? So we had existing source of truth and the data governance around it. That was an easy one to prioritize. So of course we just take the data, we put it in the repository, and we already have established process for governing that data. So we know that we can trust the quality of the data. In our case, it was the applications and capabilities. So that was the first one that we activated. The second priority was that no source of truth exists and there is no data governance around it. That was the case for us with strategies. So we had different types of strategies that were created, anchored, and connected to each other, but we didn't really have the documentation source of truth for storing it. So that was the second one that we activated. And the ones that we activated later were existing source of truth that we had in the company, but we didn't really have good governance around the data in place. So that's something that we prioritized at the later stage. Yeah, and then also a couple of words about key success factors from our perspective. Would like to share that it's crucial to onboard the architecture community into the tool. So it's not enough just to work with that platform within EA team. And I know that in many cases, in many other companies that I spoke to, it remains an EA tool. And that's, I think, failure type or recipe for disaster, you can say like that. So it's crucial to really work on the change management and communicating the benefits of using this tool across the architectural community and the whole CIO office. So initial documentation about the large projects and change initiatives was done by enterprise architects and domain architects. So domain architects help to really document how our landscape looks like within different domains, so manufacturing, sales and marketing, supply chain, so having closer focus on each and every domain. But then a huge importance was connected to also that solution architects will be using the repository, because most of the changes to our IT landscape are coming through these ongoing projects, right? So small change of electronic invoice system in one country or in, let's say, one market is affecting the IT landscape, and we have a number of those projects happening continuously. So that was very important also to have solution architects working in the repository, knowing how to really document the changes, how to work with the baseline and target architecture, just to make sure that we will have a good practice on documenting the changes in the IT landscape. This was supported, or I don't want to say enforced, but it was supported through introducing standard viewpoints in the platform that solution architects could use for architectural review forums. So every change project that was affecting IT landscape was possible to document through these standard viewpoints. So we would have applications and capability visualized through one viewpoint, then we would have infrastructure visualized through another standard viewpoint. And that's also quite a nice thing about using this industry standard, Archimate, that we used and that the platform also supported. And also, one thing to not forget is, as I already mentioned, to anchor this meta model throughout different teams who are working with this. So absolutely, we are managing, let's say, business applications in one team, infrastructure in another team, but then not to forget about the relationships between different objects. How are they created? How are they maintained? So here we can, in some cases, use automation. So we can, of course, see which applications are hosted in which servers. But in other cases, we need to do this mapping manually. So if we, for example, looking into business applications that are supporting certain strategic directions, then we need that someone actually creates that relationship in the repository. So from application to strategy, right? So that was a very important thing to not forget. So this relationship between different objects, who is maintaining them, who is accountable for what area, and so on. Good. I think I stop here and I open the floor for questions.